Welcome to the Physician Sense Podcast, a podcast designed specifically for physicians, offering a breakdown of complex financial topics to help you develop your financial IQ, further your financial journey, and improve your well-being. Whether you're a medical student, resident, fellow, or attending physician, you're sure to learn something new that will benefit your journey. And now, your hosts, Chad Chubb and Tyler Olson.
Welcome to the Physician Sense Podcast. I am your co-host, Chad Chubb, with my other fantastic co-host wearing a great shirt for this episode today, Tyler Olson, live. And Tyler, we are back with another Ask Me Anything, or better yet, we do actually read our Google form questions is a better way to describe these episodes. So, great question. Question only goes to Tyler, though, because Tyler has the link to the Google form. But I do love this topic, more or less high level. How can we as physicians support our loved ones? Cliff Notes version. Tyler will read you the full question, but I love these types of questions. I love anything that's live, right? It's something that comes up right away. You send that question over. So if you're watching this, listening to this, send us a question. Send us a little note there on the Google form, and we're going to get to it. And we keep everything neutral, right? We're not going to call you out. But I love this question. Tyler, how are you, my friend? Again, great shirt. How's the question looking? Where's the shirt from?
The shirt, it was a gift from my wife.
Always have the best taste.
Yeah. What did she say? This color is part of my season. That's it. Like, I have a season, which is, I think it's just another way of saying, like, there's a few colors that particularly go well with my face and skin color. I don't know. Anyway, this is part of my season, and she's fantastic and thoughtful.
Tell your wife that I do love the season choice. It looks great.
I will tell her. She will appreciate that. And even though y'all are listening to this in the fall, right now it is 90 degrees here in New England, so it's a nice light shirt.
150 in Florida, so don't brag. So,
well, at least neither of us are in Death Valley. We'll,
sometimes it feels like that here, but I think we have more humidity, unfortunately.
Keep the AC on, my friend.
Yeah.
This was a really great question to essentially center on how we can support loved ones. And the question reads like this. If you have a family member who you plan to take care of all of their expenses and also give them some spending money every month, what is the best way to go about this? Would it be to open some sort of account that would generate return on the money deposited? To add some backstory, I do not need a mansion and want to give a parent a few grand a month and don't know if this is doable on a doc salary. Thank you. I love this question because I can sense a great deal of care and love for the people around this doctor. Not surprising. Y'all, care about others quite a bit. And I can see that this person is saying that they have needs, but they don't have such great of need from their perspective that they feel like they wouldn't be able to provide some financial support to someone in their family that they would like to do so. And so we thought this was a really good question to discuss because many people who become physicians, they become the highest earners in their not just immediate family, but often extended family. Many physicians in the States who are originally from other countries and came to the U.S. to train as IMGs, they talk about like wanting to support family back home. To perhaps their family would come here at some point and trying to balance all that. And so we want to center today's discussion on how can you support such loved ones and values in a responsible way so that you're able to be generous without hurting yourself. Because a strong opinion I have is that if we just give and give and give and give, and we're not being reasonable with like our own limitations, in essence, we're being immodest, we are actually hurting the people that we're trying to help. We're hurting loved ones, hurting patients, hurting friends, because we will become a horrible person that is unhappy and unhealthy, and that ends up hurting us and others around us. So we have to find a balance.
Yeah. You can almost feel the emotion in the question, but even for Tyler and I that hear this, this comes through a Google form, so it's like a text, right? You can't really pick up on the emotion exactly, but you can tell this person really cares. And we don't know the whole story, but a lot of times, how often do we see it? We're like, "Hey, my parents paid for all my undergrad, all my medical school. Like they literally got me through here debt free or with very little debt, and now like this is how I repay them." Or multi generational homes that are all in one home. And you said it perfectly, where I often compare, at least in terms of like stereotypes of like, hey, physicians have a lot of like that high paid athlete, right? You're the highest paid person now, and this and that, and people are going to ask for this, and you need to know where it does make sense to say no. This question in particular sounds a lot more personal, as opposed to like, your third friend from third grades, cousin's friend's uncle is like, hey, can I get some free cash? But it's a deep conversation, and even when we have these conversations with clients, right, there's a lot of moving parts, and in this episode today, we're not going to have a perfect answer, but we're going to give you some tools to think through and things that you can walk through in terms of how can you make this work, and some things to keep in mind. But if you're hearing this for the first time thinking, wow, I didn't know anyone else really asked that type of question, I've had that question forever, I think a lot of people have this question. It's almost one that's even clients maybe don't bring up because they're worried about like, can I give mom, dad $1,000 per month, $2,000 per month, a couple $100 per month? And it's just one of those ones where I think a lot of people have this on their mind, but they just don't ask it. So that's why I love this question when it came in. So where do we start, Tyler?
Well, there's a few steps that we'll walk you through. Before we do, though, I want to backtrack. I said that someone that gives and gives and gives would become a horrible person. That's not what I meant. I just meant that they would. I just meant to say that we become a version of ourselves that may not be who we wanted to be, and sometimes we're in that situation. We can't help it. So I apologize. I don't think that people that give incessantly are horrible people. It's important to be able to find that balance so that we can stay on the track that we wish to, as much as life allows us to be. That being said, I think that we start with identifying this value, like a person's like thinking like, hey, like I'm an attending physician now. I'm making a couple $100,000 a year, 300,000, whatever it is. And it all is going to start with creating your own financial plan. So assuming that you have done the work of building a budget and started to save so that you have an emergency fund, and building a retirement savings plan by using your employer's retirement plans, this next value is one of those things that needs to get added to that stream. Whenever I think of like how to save or how to support an expense, whatever it is, it needs to line up. Like I imagine like a big lake, and then there's like these streams that stem off from it, and they go off in different directions. And you got to make sure that there's enough flow going in each direction. And when it comes to the thought, is it possible that I could support a family member by giving them X number of dollars per month? The decision of whether that's doable or not must be done within the context of your overall financial plan, right? So you've got your net take-home pay, and you have to have identified these very essential savings goals. But there's a difficulty here in just being like, oh yeah, you need to make sure your emergency fund and your retirement is fully funded before you start to consider this. I might feel that way, and you might feel that way, Chad, but I know many people who are not from the United States whose value system and social structure is such that supporting family, providing education costs, or providing education for their kids by saving is more important than saving for retirement. You've probably seen other advisors say stuff like, you can't borrow for retirement, right? Yeah. So that might be technically true, like from a money system perspective, but like how does that apply in the case of someone who's, this person was like, I'd like to give this person a couple $1,000s a month. If that is more important to them, or it's like equally important to them relative to their own retirement savings plan, or like a parent who has like a child, they're like, no, we want to fully fund their college before I start saving for retirement. How would you go about that?
You nailed it in terms of the values conversation. Kind of throw myself under the bus. Like, that's one of my go-to lines, right? You can't borrow for retirement. That is a very good broad stroke of the brush with zero personalization to it, right? That is like, you're in a room of 1,000 doctors and like you throw that one out there, but you need to understand, like, most people, there's going to be unique values in there that are going to be more important than others. And I think it depends too, like, from culture perspective too, like, you might not be on track for retirement, but here we are talking about an individual that wants to take care of her parents. Okay, well, now this individual could also have that same support from their kids eventually. So even if their retirement doesn't fit the financial plan like perfectly, and they're like, well, you're not going to be able to retire ever. Like, I think there's so much more to it that's important. And, to your main question in there, right? How do you're not on track for this, you're not on track for this, but you also want to send, $2,000 back to mom and dad. I think it's just having that true conversation, right? It's saying, okay, you value this more than that. And one of my favorite lines I use with clients is, you have to buy into this plan more than we do. Because if you don't buy into it, it's never going to stand a chance. So it's all coming back to that values conversation on like, okay, we can do this. We're going to put this very high on our budget. We always call it top-down budgeting. We're going to put that very high up on here. It means it's a high priority. Now, because of that, we need to watch some other things. Maybe retirement is cut back a little bit, but you're okay saying like, hey, instead of 65, 68 is cool with me. If that helps me do what I want to do here. It could be, well, instead of 2 big trips, I'm going to do 1 trip per year because of this, because that's more important to me than 2 luxurious vacations. And as a financial advisor, I believe that is our main job, right? It's to take all the complicated mess, break it down into a few options, and then let the client choose what they're most comfortable with. Again, giving context so they don't ever hurt themselves either or put themselves in a really bad situation, and allowing them to say like, okay, well, maybe instead of 2,000 per month, I'm going to go with 1,500. And then on top of that, I'm okay working an extra 2 years based on all this. And you and I both know, right? We're still looking at financial planning software over decades with assumptions that change by the second, and it's going to be wrong. So who knows? All of a sudden, you might be actually on track even with that lower number. Or maybe we actually have to change more things later down the line. That's all part of planning. I think presenting what we see, what we know, and then allowing the client to say, like, I like this option the most. That fits, right? That fits my values. I understand I'm giving up here, or tweaking a little bit here, tweaking a little bit there, but I'm good with that. That's what I want. And that's how I would look at it.
Mm.
How about you? Similar?
Yeah, it is. It's like in this situation, that's a very good baseline way of going about it. If we're helping somebody else, we can't be in their shoes. We can't fully understand the nuance. We can empathize to some degree. It's the same thing like with any of the women in medicine that come to work with us. There's facets of things that I cannot understand as a man. And in this respect, as far as cultural differences or value differences, but understanding that like what your, like a given person's value set is, it's just about being intentional about it, being like, this is what is important to me. And whether you work with a planner or if you do this yourself, you just have to be honest with yourself about not just the values and how you order them, but the compromises that you have to make in order to make your number one priority that priority. And, as long as you fully understand it, then you'll know like, okay, this is okay. Then you proceed and make the adjustments accordingly. That is it in a nutshell. The other area then that needs to be addressed is like more the minutia and like either investment profits or tax ramifications of like giving money to people. So like to give space to this person who asked this question, they specifically said, I'd like to be able to give them a couple $1,000s a month for them to just spend. Should I just just give it to them? Should I put it in a certain type of an account? the first thing that came to my mind when I read that question was the gift tax exemption.
Mm-hmm.
That, like, but I've also heard of like others like putting their family members on payroll in order to figure out a way to like pay them, and where they could even get like Social Security credit. Have you facilitated that before?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So to your point, the gift tax is the one that I think comes to mind first. Just like, hey, the gifting limit this year is 18,000. Another misconception there. I always try, like in our forum here, like everyone thinks like, oh, what if I go over 18,000? Well, remember, then you get into your lifetime exemption. So you can gift more than $18,000. You just have to file an extra form, and you start to tap into your lifetime exemption, which I believe is like right around 12 million now. Now that number can change. That technically is supposed to sunset in 2025. So just keep that in mind. That's one of those ones where people think there's like this iron wall, and you're like, 18,000, can't do 1801. No way, no way. There's a lot of flexibility there. So just keep that in mind. But to your salary question, now, the example we had with a client that we had a conversation with was they were not from the States. So their parents were from over in Asia. They were going to come over to the States. They wanted them to essentially babysit, but they wanted to do it by also setting them up on salary. And it was pretty neat when you think about it, because not only does it help them start to collect some Social Security benefits, but also, I should say, credits, it builds those up. Also, their biggest thing was actually not even Social Security. They wanted Medicare. They wanted their parents to have good health care. So that's actually why they were trying to build up the credits. Now, again, they got to make sure they're doing, actual work too, but they were babysitting. That's a legit occupation. I mean, we have some clients, we have another household that they were more or less doing like stuff around the house and, cleaning and keeping things tidy and laundry, dual physician household. So almost like having the family in there just to keep the house up to date. And they set all that up. And the hardest part is, right, you got to set it up on payroll. Depends how, clean you want to be in terms of like an LLC and being very secure with it. Hopefully, if your mom hurts herself in your house, she doesn't sue you. But I'm sure there's a crazy story out there. So, you can also really set up the rules here. But I think there's a lot of neat ways to do this. And another thing I wanted to add on, Tyler, the amount of clients that we work with, again, younger clients, that they know nothing about their parents' financial situation. I think that needs to change in this country. Not being nosy, but especially when it comes to like starting to help. Not saying like, oh, mom, I'm not sending you a check for $2,000. Look, you're doing fine. But just making sure that they are optimizing. Like, how many of us, and some of us can look in the mirror, and I can say this about one of my parents, like, has so much money in cash that you're like, mom, if you just go put this over at like an Ally bank, like it actually is enough money for you to like live off of an extra, because you don't do anything crazy. Like, I mean, you can even buy a few scratch offs with it. Like, you're in a good spot here, mom. Like, you can do this. And I think there's so many little areas for our parents that are just not optimized yet that maybe we can actually get them in a better spot. And I always come back to like this completely different topic, but like even just no one has their wills and living wills and things like that. So if you're going down this road on how can I put mom and dad in a better spot, or even grandparents, see if you can get involved in their finances. I know that could be a large ask if, it's a lot of jargon in there, but maybe it's even talking to their advisor, but little areas to optimize. And maybe it's not that. Maybe it truly is. Mom has like, tin cans all over the house with cash in there. Like, we're going to slowly get this into the bank, mom, because homeowners insurance does not help you here if this place burns down. So just a little food for thought there. Maybe just even look to optimize there too. Maybe we can even help mom and dad more, or again, grandparents or whoever we're helping in this situation.
That's a great idea. From the opportunities that I've had, speak with doctors about talking to their parents about money. They feel nervous about like, how do I do it? I think one good thing to note where adult children have had greater success in conversation is to approach it from the standpoint of protecting one another. Like, because there's things that you can ask for, and there's things that like you don't have to ask for. Like, and the way you ask is a big deal. Like, so for example, being prepared for the conversation where what are the things that I'm trying to achieve here in this conversation? My mom and dad, they're private about their finances. I want to make sure that everyone's protected. Just lead with that genuineness. Be like, listen, you're like your own family, and I do not want to intrude. We're a big family. We love each other. We want to help one another at times. I've been reading about the importance of making sure that, our estate planning decisions make sense and that we know how we could help you if something were to happen, or we want you to know how you could help us if something happened to us. And so you kind of make it reciprocal where you're not just kind of like being like, oh, let me, show me where your money is. Or like, all right, how do you invest? like instead of asking questions like that, you can say, hey, whatever your situation is and whatever our situation is, how can we help each other to be prepared to support one another if something happens? Sometimes parents are extremely guarded and they don't want to share any details, but they might be willing to tell you, hey, if something does happen to us, we've got a binder. It's located in this location, and it shows all the information that you need about our will, our trust. If you don't know that, if your parents, your older parents don't volunteer that information, you could use that as an example to show them and say like, hey, like, so that we could support one another. I wanted to understand how we could support you if something were to happen to you. But because I know you weren't expecting this question, I wanted to share with you how you would be able to support us if something happened to us. We have a binder in such and such a place, and it is this information and this information and this information. That might help them to come to realize that they're missing some critical information without accusing them, without them feeling ashamed. It might get them thinking. And you might be able to like just have some more conversation, because then they might say like, you're like, oh yeah, like I've got this or this. And they might be willing to say like, but I don't have a trust, or I don't have a will, or whatever it might be. And then you could be like, oh, I know this stuff is really stressful. I was able to do it with this DIY method, or we have an attorney that we found in town that like does great work if you need somebody. Anyway, just some ideas, because these conversations are tough, but they're critical to being able to like actually provide support for these situations.
Yeah. Sometimes they call it the legacy drawer, legacy binder. So if mom and dad have something like that, or grandparents again, it's a tough conversation. It's a good conversation. That's kind of why I noted that at the start too. And it's amazing how many people know nothing about their parents' finances. Even for myself, like luckily my parents trust me with their own money. But like without that, I don't know. I don't know if I ever would have had a reason to like go down that route. And there's still, like, I kind of made that joke about my mom earlier. Like there's still some stuff I'm like, Mom, you need to kind of tweak this a little bit. You're kind of a little bit too old school in this. Like we got to modernize a little bit. So even there, like even as their advisor, there's still some things to tweak. So I don't know. I wonder if I wasn't, if I was a physician per se, would I ever have asked my parents about their money, at least at this phase of the game? I don't know. And I can see, again, why I say like, hey, it's important. I'm saying it because of how many clients we've seen going through this. And I'm like, hey, have you gone through this? And then when we do kind of peel back the onion a little bit, we do find out things are kind of a mess, and they're in this weird product that was sold to them, and then this, and kind of all these different things. But kind of coming back to her initial question, how would you set this up, Tyler? Like
it says taking care of all their expenses, giving them spending money. It doesn't sound like they're living with them, right? Because they say, I do not need a mansion.
Yeah, I felt that too in that wording of it.
So it seems like there's a demarcation of like, I have needs, my parent has needs, and I don't have huge amounts of needs. I have some, but it sounds like they're separate. So, I mean, if it were me, what I would do is like, if there is that like babysitting opportunity, if you have children and you do need daycare help, you could, even if like the grandparent wants to take care of the kid anyway, it is a genuine skill set and need. And you could pay them, like Chad was mentioning earlier, and you could facilitate it in such a way that it's not a gift, it's compensation. They get Social Security credit, it can be beneficial in that regard. But you do have to be organized about it then, and it can't just be like giving them cash. You have to be like using even like a simple, payroll system like through like QuickBooks or like Gusto or something like that. So Gusto, Gusto, is an online platform that facilitates payroll for simple businesses. That's one that I know many people use. But if you're not going to do that, if you're not going to do it that way, you can just orient yourself around like how much you want to give to them within the confines of your own financial plan. So first step is you need to develop your own financial plan. so that you know what you actually have available to you and that you're prioritizing like things in the order that you want to. After that, as far as the actual flow of cash, if you intend to give them like $2,000 per month, and that is going to equate to 24,000, then you're going to go over the gift tax exemption by $6,000 per year. And that just, it kind of chips away at the many millions in exemption that you can have over the course of your lifetime. And for many people, that is not an issue. So for you to like chip away $600 per year on the lifetime gift tax exemption, it's probably not a big deal. But your situation is unique to everyone else's, so I can't say for sure that it doesn't matter. You do want to like understand your own situation, your own estate tax ramifications long term. And that would be like if you're going to be very wealthy.
If you're worried about the $13.6 million federal tax exemption right now, you could probably gift mom and dad a couple $1,000 per month. Going to throw it out there.
See, you're so much better at like saying things concisely. I just like ramble sometimes. So.
Well, I always pull out my cheat sheet, but I think I said 12 million earlier. It's like, heck, it's almost up to 14 million at this point. But yeah, that's also, I guess we probably could have said that at the start too, where if you have that type of good problem, you're probably not worried about some gifting in here. And also, again, another little thing that we kind of skip over, but it depends on your situation, but the gifting limit is per person. So like, let's just say husband and wife are in the house and they want to gift to mom, right? Both of you can technically gift 18,000 to her. So a total of 36 there. So kind of a unique benefit there. And it resets every year. Every year you get that. So technically on 12/31, you could do it. And then technically right there the next day on 1/1, you could do it again. So just kind of keep that in mind as well. There's some unique ways if you need to get above that 18. They don't ever want to have to add like an extra tax form. I think most accountants say that form is pretty straightforward, but just kind of adding some tidbits in there.
The other detail to look into here too was when I read the part where they wrote, open up some sort of account that would generate return on the money deposited. This would only be relevant if you are trying to set money aside for them, but not give it to them to spend right now. So if that's the intention, if you're trying to bulk up like a large amount and then give it to them sometime later, it doesn't sound like that's what you're saying. But if it is, you could just put it into your own high yield savings account at a bank like Ally and let it build up and it'll earn some interest without it being at risk of loss because it's not investing at that point. It's just a high yield savings account that's FDIC insured. And then you could give it to them in bulk at that point. But if you're just planning on giving it to them per month, which I think is what you're wanting to do, it would just be a matter of setting up like you both have Chase, for example. You could use Zelle. It's super easy. Or like even like Apple Pay or Apple Cash, right? You could just send money that way. If there's a way to automate it so that it's not something that you're doing manually and it's not something that you have to talk about every month, that's probably better. You can even do like turn it into like bill pay through your bank login where you could send them a check. Like there's a lot of ways to do it electronically where it can go directly from your bank account to theirs on a monthly basis. And if that's your plan so that they can just have some spending money and that pays for their expenses, then that's what I would do. I would just set up an automatic ACH transfer per month. And then the other thing, one more thing on this was you mentioned taking care of all of their expenses and also give them some spending money every month. So if your intention is to pay for their expenses, if you're talking about paying for their expenses directly, then that is just expanding the portion of the pie of your money that you're dedicating to them. And then you're like paying the mortgage or you're paying the rent or whatever the bill is that you're wanting to cover. And that would just be a demarcation from the spending money flow. But it's all just like, what's the total amount that you're wanting to give your parent per month in order to support them? Now, if like the expense that you're talking about that's covering, they're going to pay it and you're just giving them the money to do that, then you're just giving them a bigger monthly ACH transfer per month. That's how I would frame it.
Yeah, I'd think of it as cash flow too. I mean, if you're in a blessed spot where you do have a large amount of cash sitting around and you're like, no, I do want to mark this for mom per se, you can go put that in one of the high yield savings again, the Allies, the Laurel Roads, the Marcuses. For fun, I just wanted to see like, what's the exact number? Let's assume you had a 5% interest rate and your goal was to gift $18,000 per year. If you have $360,000 in cash in the bank right now, mission accomplished, my friend. You can do that. So I just kind of wanted to see what the break-even number was. But moral of the story, I think at least how it was worded, it'd be more of a cash flow conversation. But if you do have some good money set aside, at least get some interest while it's sitting there. Yeah, it doesn't sound like an investment type thing. And anything investment based, I would say investments, anytime you think of investing, it's a 10-year horizon. It's not anything closer than that. So allies or just straight cash, I think really fits well here, at least based on the notes that we know of.
Great question, listener. We really appreciate you putting that together and sending it to us. It's an important question that many people are asking themselves. We hope that this was helpful to you. If you have any follow-up questions, you could send me a DM on Twitter. I know this is helping to segment that out, but I still very much welcome them. And if you have a follow-up question that you want to submit to the show, just use the Google form again. And that goes for the rest of you too. We would love to hear your questions and make them a part of a future episode. So I think that about covers it. What do you think, Chad?
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, it's one of those questions when you first get it, you're like, oh, I don't know how long we would really talk about this one. Then you start talking, you're like, could talk for hours on this actually. So no, you said it beautifully. Thank you again to the listener, the viewer for that question. We love that stuff. And also, I think sharing something even more personal than like, what's a backdoor Roth IRA? I love that question too, though. I do. But that one was good. So thank you. Tyler, nailed it as always, my friend. I'll see you on the next one.
Sounds good. See ya.
This information is for general purposes only. This information is not intended to be a substitute for specific professional, financial, or tax advice, as individual concerns vary. Please see a financial professional, CPA, and/or an attorney in regards to your own individual situation. Wealth Heals Advisory Services and Financial Planning offered through Vicus Capital Inc., a federally registered investment advisor. Olson Consulting LLC, offering advisory services and financial planning, is a state-registered investment advisor.